how to lower your marketing expenses, or in other words, your customer acquisition costs. So ladies and gentlemen, hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to another video. My name is Omar. If you're new to this channel, I'm the founder of Growth Labs, which is a digital growth incubator for e-commerce brands around the world. We spent over $10 million on ads. We've helped multiple brands scale past 6 figures, past 7 figures, and multiple 7 figures in revenue in the past few years. And this is my way of sharing the insights that I've gathered and that my team has gathered throughout the years, throughout the tribulations, the blood, sweat, and tears that we put in every single day for the past 3 years. So if you're new to this channel, welcome and hope you enjoy this video. Today's video, what I wanted to do is really cover one of the aspects that I think a lot of e-commerce founders get entangled in and don't really understand how to act on, which is how to lower your marketing expenses, or in other words, your customer acquisition costs. So essentially the money that you're giving all of these ad platforms to give you customers, right? So how do we actually lower that metric? Which levers do we pull on to lower it? And how can we maximize the efficiency of the dollar amount that we give to these ad platforms and actually get the output that we want on a regular basis, okay? What I'd like to do is share my screen as usual, show you a little bit of a visual breakdown of how to do that, and essentially make it more visual for you to implement inside your business in the next few days so that you can see the results that you want from your ads. So buckle up and I'll see you on the next screen. So ladies and gentlemen, this is essentially a video about, like I said, lowering your CAC or lowering your marketing expenses, right? So your customer acquisition cost will essentially be your highest expense when it comes to growing your business, because that's what actually fuels the growth that you need to see the traction that you want from your sales, your customers, etc., etc. So we really need to understand where this number comes from, which metrics actually act on it, and how can we pull on different levers to lower it, obviously, and make it more efficient, okay? So essentially what we want to do is we want to understand the dollar amount that we're giving to ad platforms. So for example, here, let's call it Meta, right? So you're giving money to Meta to advertise on Facebook, on Instagram, and other networks. We want to understand what is the efficiency, right, of that dollar, right? So for example, let's say you're advertising for supplements, right? And your customer acquisition cost in January, right? So in Jan, you're paying on average, on a monthly basis, obviously, you're paying $30 to acquire a customer, okay? And then in February, you've got a CAC of $25, right? So you've essentially saved 1/6 of your expenses is gone, right? Boom. We just saved this. This is pure, basically added to your profits, because you're paying less to acquire the same customer with the same AOV, let's call it the same conversion rate, etc., just for this analysis sake, right? So essentially this dollar amount that you're paying is much more efficient than this one. Basically, you're getting more customers for essentially the same amount. Let's say here you spent $5,000. and here you're spending $5,000, right? You will actually get more customers from this month than this month, but the budget is the same, right? So the efficiency is what changed, right? Your marketing budget is much more efficient and much more, I'd say, prone to give you customers at a cheaper rate, right? And this is exactly what we want to do. We want to make sure that this metric never gets out of control and obviously stabilizes at a level where we kind of predict the amount of profit that we make, right? That is super important, right? However, a lot of advertisers or even brand owners like yourself might wonder how to lower this thing, right? How can we make it that, in January and February, we actually make it a decision to lower it to $25, right? Or a conscious effort to lower it to that level, right? Because a lot of times it happens in February, and then what you end up seeing in March is a CAC of 35, for example. Maybe it went up, right? And then you don't understand why your ROAS is being impacted, why your costs are going up, etc., etc. You have no understanding of what's going on. You're just, going through the waves every single month, every single day, not understanding what's going on in the broader sense, because you don't understand what fundamentally makes this metric, which is your customer acquisition cost, right? And this is super important. I hope this video serves you well. But without further ado, let's explain exactly how advertising works. When we say customer acquisition costs, a lot of people think that you're paying a dollar amount, right, to ad platforms, right? So let's call them ad P, excuse my writing, and they spit out customers, right? And that is a very, very simple way of looking at things. Obviously, it is true, right? But it's a very, very simplistic way of looking at things, and it actually doesn't draw the whole picture, right? What you actually do is you're paying, your money goes out of your bank account, right? And you're paying ad platforms, not for customers, but you're paying them for impressions, right? So you're paying them to have the luxury of posting an ad on your behalf that actually shows your product to potential customers, so users, right? So they serve impressions to users, right? And then what ends up happening is users decide if they want to become a customer or not, right? And this is if you have a great product, if your ads are great, if your, all the metrics look good, and we'll get into them in a second, right? But this is essentially how it looks. You're paying for impressions. You're not paying for customers. You're paying for impressions. A lot of people are paying a lot on ads and they're not getting anything out of it. It's because Facebook or Google or Instagram, they're not blackmailing them, or they're not, scamming them. It's because they're paying for impressions, right? So Facebook's job is to get you customers, yes, but your job as an advertiser is to understand that you are the only person responsible to convert impressions into customers, right? And this is how it looks like in terms of metrics. So let's say the money leaves your bank account, right? And then you're paying for impressions. So essentially how that translates is the CPM. So the cost per 1,000 impressions, right? So how much do you pay to get your ad to be shown on Facebook 1,000 times, right? And that is the CPM, okay? What happens next is what we call a link clicks, right? So what happens when a person sees an ad? They either click or they don't click, right? So link clicks happen, and that is a fixed number. And then how do we quantify the effectiveness of an ad is how many people out of 100 people will actually click on your link. So that's what we call the CTR, or the click-through rate, right? So we have CTR here, and that is directly correlated to the impact that your ad has on the first touch point, right? So when I see your ad the first time, if I see the image, I see the headline, I see the copy, what happens is I make a judgment call. Either I click or I interact with the ad, or I just keep scrolling, right, as a user. So this is the CTR. We want this to be as high as possible, right? Now what happens when you get to the other step is that once people click, then what happens? Well, they get taken to a landing page, right? Or your website, your product page, wherever you're taking them with the ad, wherever you program the ad to take them to, that's where they're going, right? So landing page, right? Now, when the landing page is fully loaded, the customer can then obviously do what? They can scroll, they can check what the product is about, they can check what your story, your brand story is about, but then they have the choice of adding to cart. Right? And so what happens next? They can check out, right? And then they can purchase, right? So you see the distance between the purchase and the money you're paying is very, very, very big. So you need to understand exactly what you're paying for and what the funnel looks like, so that you can kind of dissect what is happening in the back end, right? Because if you're expecting to pay $1, right, and get a customer, right, or pay, let's say, $1 amount and get a customer, then obviously the only way you can look at things is like this, boom, and then customers. And then we don't have it. It's okay, it's the platform's fault, it's the agency's fault, it's this, it's that, it's never my ads, it's never my fault, my responsibility, right? But when you take a look at the whole funnel, you can kind of see where things tend to break, because the only thing that you're paying for is this, right? And then what happens here is your ad, right? And your product and your website and the funnel that you've built to basically convert a stranger into a paying customer. So what we want to do is we want to understand where the problem is, okay? Because the only way you can dissect this funnel is to actually know, okay, am I doing my job correctly in terms of link clicks? Am I doing my job correctly in terms of CTR? Are people actually going through and adding to cart? Are they checking out? Are they actually purchasing? If not, let's reverse engineer what is going on in the funnel to make sure that we understand exactly where the drop-off is, act on it, solve it, and then boom, we can scale, right? And we can allocate more capital towards it because we fixed the machine at the root cause of the problem, okay? So what we want to do is understand every single metric here. So CPM is going to be the cost that you pay Facebook to show your ads on the platform, right? So if that number is very, very high, you want it basically to be as low as possible, right? Some of our clients are getting a $7 CPM, some people are getting a $25 CPM, right? So it really ranges between this interval. Some clients are getting sometimes $90 to $200, and that is a huge problem, right? Because you can't scale anything. Obviously in e-commerce, right? We're talking about e-commerce. If you're in the education space and the info product space and the B2B space, this is totally normal. So don't be scared on if you get these numbers. But here we're talking about e-commerce. Obviously my audience is mainly e-commerce founders that are looking to scale. So if you're looking to dissect what your CPM is, if it ranges between $7 to $25, it is a healthy, I'd say, interval, right? Sometimes it might spike to $30. If you're doing some fancy retargeting or whatever, it may spike above $25, and that means that your audience is too small. But essentially what we want to do here is we want to make Facebook's job as easy as possible. This means that we want to avoid to be a marketing Karen, right? If you're the type of marketer that does, complex targeting, all of that complex funnel structure and that complex funnel, I say ad account structure, whatever, it really will not serve you well because you're not putting Facebook in the best dispositions to go ahead and show you the customers that will purchase from you, right? So let's say if you're in the supplements niche and you're looking for a 43-year-old that is, maybe overweight, right? Likes dogs and frisbees, and these are the targeting options that you give Facebook. Well, you might get a CPM of $1,300, right? It's not good to do that, right? It really is not good to do that because you're constraining the algorithm to only show you these people. And how many of these people are there in America and in Canada and all of these countries? I don't think there are that many, right? So we need to understand that the best way to do targeting is basically to do stuff like this: 18, 65 plus. Depending on your product, if it's a product that is solely catered to women, then obviously go with women. If it's solely catered to men, go to men. But if it's not, if it's a unisex product that, it's a product that you can gift or whatever, then we would go with no gender targeting. No gender, right? And no manual placements. So we don't want to force the algorithm to show the ads only on feeds or only on stories. That will only hike the price up and you will basically pay more for your ads, okay? So essentially we're giving the full freedom to the algorithm to go ahead and fetch people that will, benefit from our product. And how do they do that? Well, their AI basically got stronger and stronger every single year since they started. They've gathered billions and billions of data points on every single, combination of human being that can possibly exist, and they know what they're doing, right? So trusting them with this shouldn't be an issue, okay? It's a little bit counterintuitive, but once you get a hang of it, it really is a no-brainer, right? So this is the CPM, right? So we're acting here, we're making sure that our CPM is as low as it can be. We do that by, again, not constraining the algorithm and understanding that we want the algorithm to have as much freedom as it can have so that it shows our ads to the most people possible so that it can learn which people interact with our ad, and then it optimizes based off of that. So it's essentially gearing or biasing the algorithm to offer you the least I'd say advertising expenses, okay? Then what do we have? We have link clicks and CTR. Those two are linked, right? They're interlinked, right? So how do you incite people to click more? Well, if you want to take a look at what you do as a user, right? I'm assuming everyone here uses social media. Once something really intrigues you or it strikes a nerve or it's polarizing, then you stop scrolling. Right? It's a pattern interrupt. It's a mechanism that really brought you out of your slumber, of your sleep, right? Because that's what you're doing when you're scrolling. You're not really conscious of what you're doing. So when something really hits hard, then you basically spring out of your scrolling behavior, right? And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to put our users or the people we target in a state to make a judgment call. We want them to sit down and actually judge our ad. So we want it to be polarizing, right? Excuse my writing. We want it to be engaging, right? And we want it to be pattern interrupting. So these will apply differently based on the product that you're selling, the industry that you're targeting, the demographics that you're targeting, the copy, etc., right? But essentially, so pattern interrupt, right? But essentially, what you want to do here is act on your ad copy, headline, right? But the most important part will be your creative, right? Because you need to understand the state of the average human being today in 2023. That person doesn't have the attention span of the same person that was living in 2016, 2015, or in even 2010, right? The attention span is shrinking every single day. So we need to capitalize on that by, just giving punchy creatives to people, because that's the first thing they look at, right? It's the creative. So by optimizing your creative, optimizing your headline and your ad copy, making it so congruent and so, I say, coherent, that it basically spikes an interest in your customers' minds, that's how you increase the CTR. So people are clicking, right, more, because when they see your ad, they're intrigued. So they want to see what's the next step, okay? Now, what happens after the CTR is what we call off-platform, right? So they actually clicked on the ad, they exited the platform they were in, be it Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, and they're now on your turf, right, on your website. So now you need to make sure that your website is actually converting, right? So we want to be converting leads into customers, okay? So the first thing you want to do is optimize the page they're landing on. If they're landing on the product page, you want to optimize the product page. If they're landing on a collections page or a home page, you want to optimize it based on where they are landing and why do you want them to land on this specific page. You might want them to land on a home page because you want them to learn more about your product. You want them to read a specific piece of content before going ahead and actually purchasing. That's fine. You just need to determine why it is you want to put them on that specific page, right? So typically what you want to do is product page, right? Because that's the least friction, right? They're directly on the product page. They kind of saw what you were about on the ad. They're just intrigued a little bit. You're building more hype on the product page. You're building more anticipation. You're using persuasion, etc., all of that good stuff to make sure that your customers are convinced that this is the product they need to buy right now, right? And so the product page does that fantastically well because you can optimize based on browsers. So people who browse, you can entice people to add to cart, and then obviously you can build on the checkout and obviously the purchase, right? So people who browse, you want to optimize the copy, right? Some people will need more convincing than others. People who are already ready to buy because they're in the market for your solution will actually look for the add to cart button straight away and then see how that goes, on the next step, right? So you need to make sure that your call to actions are visible, right? And this is really high level stuff, guys, but it really depends on your specific website, your specific industry, etc. But if you implement this, if you understand how a funnel is articulated, then you will have no problem understanding what the customer acquisition cost is and how it can be affected by these metrics, right? And so the checkout, you basically want to make it as seamless as possible, okay? And so by acting on these metrics, by increasing your CTR, lowering your CPM, and then making sure that your website is converting as much as it can, then your CAC will basically decrease, okay? So let's do a little bit of a simulation, right? Let's say you've got a marketing budget and you've got your CPMs here, right? And then you've got your CTR, right? Then you've got your landing page visitors, and then you've got your add to carts, you've got your checkouts, right? And then you've got your purchases, right? So let's say here you're paying $10, right? The CTR here, you're doing a good job, right? And your CTR is 3%, okay? That means that if you have a budget of, let's say, $1,000, right? You're paying Facebook 1,000 impressions at $10, right? That means that you're getting impressions equal to 100,000 impressions on average for this budget. With a 3% CTR, that means that, let's say your reach is actually equal to your impressions, which is never the case, guys, because you might get more impressions than you can get individual people looking at your ads. But let's say just for the sake of this analysis, so a 3% on this number here will yield you 3,000 landing page visitors. So out of 100,000 people, 3% are clicking, which means you're getting 3,000 visitors, okay? If your conversion rate is very, very, very well optimized, that means that on average, your website is converting at a 4%. So this is a very good conversion rate, depending on the industry, obviously. Then that means that you're converting 120 people, right? Now, if your AOV equals $50, that means that your total rev will be $6,000. So that's a 6x ROAS. If you basically divide this by the number of purchases, you get your customer acquisition cost, which is $50. So your CAC might be at $50, okay? Now let's say here, for this same analysis, let's say we are getting the same budget, right? So $1,000, and your CPM here, you've got your CTR, you've got your LPs, landing page visitors, you've got your ATC, add to carts, you've got your checkouts, and you've got your purchases, right? Here, same thing, $1,000, right? CPMs didn't change, so let's call them, what did we say in the previous example? We said $10, yeah. Essentially 100,000 visitors, or should I say impressions. And then here, let's say your ads are doing less good. So they're less attractive, less engaging, they're less polarizing, etc., etc. They're not as good as the ads on the previous example. And so that translates into a CTR that is actually lower. So let's say 1.5%, right? That means that you're getting basically half the visitors, or 1,500 visitors, landing page visitors. And then let's say your website actually converts at a 3% instead of converting at a 4%, right? That means that you're getting, out of this, you're getting 45 purchases. With an AOV of $50, you will get a rev of $2,250, right? And so the CAC is going to be the amount that you spent, so $1,000 divided by the amount of purchases. So that's going to give us a CAC of, let me just do it real quick here, $22, right? And here the CAC is actually going to be $1,000 divided by 120. It's going to be $8 approximately. So you see that your CAC, just by having a ad that is not converting as much, by having less people visit your website, by having a website that converts less, you're getting a CAC that is nearly triple of what you would get if you had a fully optimized funnel, right? And just to make it clear, the CAC is actually the amount that you spent total divided by the total number of purchases that you got on a unit basis, right? So essentially $1,000 divided by 120 units of purchases, essentially, right? So you see the impact of understanding exactly how this articulates as a funnel, rather than just looking at it as this is the cost that I'm paying Facebook to give me customers. Because if you're just analyzing it like that, then it's basically linear thinking. You're not taking a look at the entire system, and you can't really make sense of anything when it comes to understanding what's going on in the back end. So yeah, this is pretty much it. Essentially, this is how we would optimize a funnel, knowing exactly how each step basically builds onto the next one, and what are the key metrics that allow us to scale the budget, or basically tell us that it's not a good funnel, that we're not doing our job properly, and that we need to revisit every single metric and make it work. So ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed this video. This is really one of those foundational skills that you can build, is really to analyze and dissect a funnel, be able to look at things really objectively and taking a look at every single metric, knowing exactly what it serves in terms of purpose and optimizing it based on the biases of the algorithms that serve us every single day. Because if we don't play hand in hand with them, we won't be successful, and obviously we won't be able to scale as high as we want. We won't be able to make as much money as we want when it comes to scaling e-commerce brands. So hope this was a valuable video for you. Implement it, try hopping into your ads manager and actually looking at the numbers and judging them objectively, and you'll see great results when it comes to fixing your problems and obviously scaling your brand past your wildest dreams. I'll see you on the next one, guys. Take care.